That's right, you guys read the title and saw the thumbnail. I'm doing a Brawl Stars video. I play other mobile games by MSM. Can't you tell? I know for a fact that my other videos besides MSM didn't do well, but I really need the variety. I don't want to keep doing them all the time. I just needed some variety, so I thought I'd do a Brawl Stars video. And for this video, I'm gonna be ranking all 49 Hypercharges. I'm gonna do this list purely based on my opinion. I'm not going to be ranking them like in competitiveness because I am not a competitive player. Also, the gameplay I'm gonna show you guys, keep in mind I don't own most of these Hypercharges, and some of them I do, but I don't have all my brawlers up to power level 11. And so I couldn't even play actual games even if I tried to show you the Hypercharges. So I'm just gonna use the training cave for them, and I'm only gonna be ranking them on the stat buffs. I'm only going to be ranking them based on the super buffs. I'm not gonna be ranking them on the stat buffs because since most brawlers get the same stat buffs, the Hypercharges. So with that out of the way, let's get started. Number 49, Pearl's Hypercharge, Pyrolytic. And for a brawler who was first released with her Hypercharge, this Hypercharge is really bad. It's like the worst Hypercharge in the entire game. I'll put in a corner of what the Hypercharge does for every brawler, but basically what Pearl's Hypercharge does is just makes her super leave a burning area behind. Now, it's cool and all, and it's very flashy, but the problem with this Hypercharge is that Pearl's super does knockback, which basically means you just knock the brawler, your enemy, out of the burning area, which makes it kind of useless. Like, what's the point of this burning area? It's not gonna, your enemies are not gonna stay. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like there's no point in this Hypercharge. Like, honestly, if it were up to me, I would have made this Hypercharge like. Overall, like, honestly, one of the worst Hypercharges. I'm so disappointed. Number 48, Sprout's Hypercharge, Thorns. I came up with this Hypercharge, like, needs to die in a fire. Like, seriously, it's so bad. Like, what is it with the robots? I think the robots just get the short end of the stick. But anyway, what Sprout's Hypercharge does, it just makes its walls do damage to enemies when they walk near it. The problem with this Hypercharge is that it only does the walls, first of all, do 500 damage apiece, which is very minuscule damage. The second thing is that it takes a really long time for Sprout to get the Hypercharge. It takes him like 18 hits. Sorry, I keep forgetting to have the type robot is generous. It takes Sprout about 18 hits in total to get his Hypercharge. That's pretty slow. And the last thing is that it, like Pearl's Hypercharge super, people can just walk around it. Like, if you have eyes, you would know for a fact that you can just walk around the Hypercharge wall. Like, sure, it leaves a little area behind, but then again, people can just walk around it. Like, the only real good thing about this Hypercharge, it's like only good in heists. But honestly, from what I've heard from the grapevine, Sprout is not that great in heist. Like, it's terrible to use in heist. I get it, like, the super does good damage to the heisters, but like, it's still so bad. I'm sorry, Sprout. I love you, but your Hypercharge is garbage. Number 47, Jean's Hypercharge, Hyper Hands. Put this Hypercharge in dead last, but then I realized you can get some use case scenarios with it, but it's like very rare. So basically what it does is that it makes Jean fire 3 hands at once, which basically makes it so that Jean can pull 3 brawlers at once. It's terrible. I mean, it's not like bad, but it's pretty garbage in my opinion, honestly. It's terrible. The reason why it's so bad is because what situation ever would it be good to pull 3 people at once? Like, there's 2 things that can go wrong. One, you could die, because if you pull 3 people at once, Jean does not have the DPS to take out 3 brawlers at once. Let alone, sometimes I think it just might be a skill issue on my part, but sometimes you can't even take out the brawler you hold with his regular super. Secondly, it takes him a really long time to charge it. And like, what is the supercharge rate? It's so, there's like, what is this hypercharge rate? It's so bad. And also, you could hurt your team with it. Like, if you pull 3 people at once, if your team doesn't have enough DPS to take out 3 brawlers at once, like, it's, like, it puts, this hypercharges basically puts you in a terrible situation if you use it. That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, don't bother getting this hypercharge. It's just really bad. I'm very unhappy that I got this hypercharge out of a star drop. It's just so garbage. Number 46. Charlie's hypercharge, Pestilence. This hypercharge is like useless. It's not as bad as Pearl's, I don't think, but it's like really bad. So basically what this hypercharge does is that at the end of Charlie's super, 3 spiders will spawn. 1, she's already got a gadget that does that, and 2, if you're just 1v1ing people with it, it's kind of useless because you have to wait for the cocoon the enemy to come out of the cocoon for the spiders to actually even do anything. And, like, it doesn't really make any sense. What is it with brawlers getting? I don't understand these brawlers who get hypercharges where in a 1v1 scenario it wouldn't even be good. Like, honestly, I think it's better to just use the hypercharge for the stat boost, if I'm being honest with you. Like, it's really useless because you can already summon the spiders with the gadget, and even then you don't need your super for it. Just overall useless. Number 45. Miko's hypercharge, Sound Check. There is a way they can fix Miko's hypercharge, but I doubt they will ever do it. Like, it's like literally one of the worst hypercharges in the entire game. What it does is that it makes Miko's super stun enemies on impact for 1.5 seconds. Now, that's not bad. Like, it could be better. Like, the stun could be longer, but it's not like terrible. It's like the same as Dynamite's gadget. The problem is that Miko cannot interrupt his super. Like, once you use his super, he stays up there for the entire duration of it. You can't interrupt it, and he can't attack while he's in the air. Which means that it takes the duration of his hypercharge, which means that once you use it, you don't get the stat benefits from the hypercharge. You essentially waste it. Since, like, look, I can't attack. So once I use the hypercharge, I essentially waste it. So he doesn't reap the benefits of the hypercharge. Like, you have to use your super as late as possible when you're hypercharged. The easy way they can fix this hypercharge is just to make it so that way his super doesn't, and like his hypercharge duration stops while he's using it, so that way, hey, it doesn't, like, he can get the stat benefits from it. But like, I know Supercell is not gonna do that, because honestly, I just hate the fact that it works like this. I love Miko as a brawler, but because his super is this stupid with this hypercharge, I just generally think, like, no, it's terrible. Number 44. Nani's hypercharge, Big Peep. I swear to God, it's always the robots in this game that get the really bad hypercharges. Like, first it was Pearl, then it was Sprout, now Nani. Who's next? Anyway, this hypercharge is like, it suffers the same problems as Miko. So basically what it does is that it makes Nani's peak grow in size as it travels. Which doesn't sound bad if you think about it, but first things first, Nani takes forever to get one hypercharge. Like, you probably won't be able to get one again. The second issue is that it's like Miko's in a sense when you use it. If you don't immediately hit somebody with it, you essentially waste it. Like, you won't get the stat boost for the hypercharge. The other problem is that it, like, the size makes it harder to, like, not run into walls. That was terrible, but like, it also makes sense though. Like, it's increasing in size. You're more likely to hit a wall than a person. On top of that, the size increase doesn't actually increase Nani's page damage. It only just... It doesn't increase his damage. It just only increases the size. The size doesn't increase his damage. It'll get bigger and bigger until at some point, yeah. The extra damage comes from the Hypercharge itself. Honestly, this Hypercharge is not the greatest. I mean, come on, man. Why you gotta do my girl Nani like that? Number 43. Brock's Hypercharge, Rocket Barrage. You know, when this Hypercharge first came out, I thought it was really balanced, but after a while, I realized it's not that great. So, what Brock's Hypercharge does, it makes him rain down full waves of rockets instead of just, you know, normal waves of rockets. Here's the thing about this thing. There's a couple issues with it. The first issue is damage. Its damage is not that great. When it was first released, each rocket only did 500 damage apiece. And then it got buffed twice to do more damage, so the rockets do like 1,000 damage now and max double. But even then, that's still not enough. The damage is really terrible, even with the extra rocket star power, which is what I'm rolling it with right now. Another thing as well, getting kills consistently with it is really stupid, because what happens is that the rockets are not as spread out, so like they're so closely together, like it's easier for enemies to dodge. This is why the regular super is honestly because the rockets are more spread out. So that way they can get kills more consistently. So that's what makes the super easier to the super is his regular super is much harder to dodge than his Hypercharge super simply because of how spread out the rockets are. So it's like, I like the concept, I like the idea they were going for with Brock. It's just that the execution of it was absolutely awful. I mean, sort of, Hypercharge super didn't still. Number 42. Daryl's Hypercharge, Barrel of Bullets. I'm pleasantly surprised Daryl even got a Hypercharge. This is one of the most recent Hypercharges, and I'm just pleasantly surprised that Daryl even got one, because Daryl got buffed in the last update to have 2 supers, and I didn't think he was gonna get a Hypercharge for a while, but no, they decided to give him this Hypercharge, and unfortunately, it's kind of bad. What it does is that it makes Daryl fire shotgun shells around him while he's using his super. It doesn't, I mean, it sounds somewhat good on paper if you think about it, because you're doing extra damage while he's using his super. The problem is that the bullets are like his recoil rotator gadget, which basically just makes it extremely inconsistent. Like, the bullets are so inconsistent. Like, you have to like line his supers up perfectly and get value out of it. Even then, it's like the damage is so minuscule. It's like it doesn't hardly anything. I mean, sure, it gives him the ability to charge his super again, but remember, he has 2 supers, and you have to get rid of both of them at the same time. Honestly though, I am a bit glad that Daryl's Hypercharge wasn't like crazy, because like I said, he did get buffed in the last update to get 2 supers, which is basically made him one of the best tanks in the entire game. But still, even then, I'm genuinely upset. Honestly, I wish his Hypercharge doubled with a couple supers. Number 41. 8-Bit's Hypercharge, Aimbot. Another one of the most recent Hypercharges. This one is such a shame. I really wanted 8-Bit to be really cool. I mean, I love the idea behind it, but like, the idea is creative, but it's just not that great. His Hypercharge makes his turret, puts his turret with a laser, so that way it can do damage, which honestly is cool and all, but it's terrible because the turret doesn't do that much damage. It only does 230 damage a piece, which isn't that great. Also, another thing as well, you have to commit being aggressive with it. The problem with it is that you're not really supposed to be aggressive with the turret. You're not supposed to put it like an aggressive position. You want to put the turret in like a place where like it's gonna be safe. Like enemies gonna have a hard time getting to it. With this hypercharge though, you have to ignore that fact and just commit to being aggressive. I mean, it does allow 8-bit to get extra damage on people and the high save, but like, the damage is so small. Does it really even help him whatsoever? Number 40. Bell's Hypercharge, Magnetic. I like the idea and the concept they were going for with Bell's Hypercharge, but like the execution of it is extremely poor. This Hypercharge makes Bell super home on her enemy.
That's gonna leave a mark.
Now, when the Hypercharge was first announced, I originally thought it was gonna be like Piper's homemade recipe gadget, where the curve wasn't gonna be that like major, but it curves very well. But the thing about this Hypercharge is that that's it. It's just a one and done Hypercharge. Like it does nothing else. Honestly, in my opinion, I think Bell and Jean should switch Hypercharges. Cause like, although I know that's like extra mark, I know like it's less likely for you to hit 3 marks, but like trying to mark 3 enemies would be really cool. And honestly, some ideas before Bell's Hypercharge even came out were that they would make the Hypercharge super have like a homing effect on the main attack, like the main attack. Bell's main attack would home in on enemies who have the mark. Honestly, I think that would have been a really cool idea for Bell. But like I said, this Hypercharge is just literally a one and done Hypercharge. Like I know it makes it easier to hit, it makes it easier for her to hit her super, and if you miss it though, it's kind of skill issue. But like that's it. Does nothing else. Number 39. Poco's Hypercharge, Medic's Melody. This Hypercharge is a mixed bag because it sounds good on paper. This Hypercharge makes Poco super overheal his teammates and himself, and depending on how much health is overhealed, they gain a shield for it that absorbs damage. Now Poco gets this thing really fast. And like the shield is alright. It gives some people at max health. It gives people 4,000 HP. 4,000 HP shield. But like the problem is that I have the issue of trying to find value because like on one hand it seems good, but the shield decays extremely fast. And 4,200 damage is like not a lot of damage. Like sure, it sounds good, but like getting value out of this Hypercharge is not the greatest. Like I like the idea, but like it could have been a little executed better. I don't know. It's just a mixed bag. It doesn't seem very valuable. Number 38. Squeak's Hypercharge, Bouncy Blob. Why in the world did I buy this Hypercharge? It's not that great. It's mid at best. Like, honestly, I had high hopes for Squeak, but like, no, this Hypercharge ain't it. What this Hypercharge does is that it makes Squeak super bounce and split twice. Which basically means, so, let me break it down. So basically, when you use the super normally, it bounces once and then it splits. And you get the Hypercharge again. When you use the Hypercharge again, it's gonna bounce and split once, and then it'll bounce again and split twice. Which basically means that his Hypercharge doubles the amount of projectiles for his super. The problem with this Hypercharge is that the area coverage for the second bounce isn't that great because it bounces so far that it's more likely to get out of range of enemies. Like, the best way you can get value out of his Hypercharge super is that you have to, like, aim it against a wall, and even then, that takes, like, perfect timing to do. So that bounces, and then splits, and then bounces again and splits. Like, it seems good on paper, like Poco's Hypercharge. It seems extremely good on paper, but like you're just not gonna get good value out of it. You have to aim it a certain way to get good value out of it. Even then, it's not guaranteed that the extra projectiles will hit. Honestly, I had such high hopes for this Hypercharge, but sorry, Squeak. I love you, but this Hypercharge is really bad. Number 37, El Primo's Hypercharge Gravity Leap. This Hypercharge could have been so much better if they had increased El Primo's range with it. So basically, this Hypercharge makes it so that way, instead of knocking enemies backwards, his super, he pulls them towards him. Which honestly is really good, because El Primo's super, it's like, El Primo would knock enemies out of the range of his main attack with his super, so that you have to chase him down, and sometimes that can be really risky, as you could possibly die. However, there is some issues with this Hypercharge. The first issue is El Primo takes forever to get it. Like, even with his tank trait, and like, just his, like, even with the tank charging rate, El Primo takes forever to get this thing. Like, you gotta hit like so many supers, get hit so many times, and for it to even be good. And not even then, sometimes it's kind of difficult to hit the super. Like, his range is like not the greatest with it. Like, although it's somewhat at a decent range, sometimes you could even miss it. So honestly, I feel like maybe they should have buffed like the range. Like in Brawl Talk when it was first released, they said they made his range bigger with the super, but it didn't actually increase the range of the super. It just increased. It just did the hit towards enemies. Like, honestly, it's good, but the fact that it takes a really long time for him to get it, it's just not that great. Number 36, Bull's Hypercharge, Jaws of Steel. If I'm being honest, this Hypercharge is what's keeping Bull from being an F tier brawler. Like, seriously, this is the only thing that's keeping him somewhat relevant in the meta. If he didn't have it, it would be terrible. Bull's Hypercharge makes it so that way any damage he takes during his super is reduced by 80%. Which is pretty decent. It's just that it gets, like, there are better Hypercharges in it. Like, honestly, I know he does get damage reduction while he's using his Hypercharge, but it slightly gets outcrept by other Hypercharges. Like, there are just some better Hypercharges is out there. I mean, without this Hypercharge, Bull wouldn't honestly be relevant. He would just be like an F tier brawler. But then again, it is also one of the first Hypercharges to ever be released. Of course, it's gonna be kind of mid. It's gonna be kind of boring. But like, I can't really think of anything else they would have done with Bull's Hypercharge. If I'm being honest, this is like the best thing they could have done for his Hypercharge super, but they're just better. It gets outcrept by a lot of other Hypercharges. Number 35, Otis's Hypercharge, Silent Stunner. This Hypercharge is mid. No, straight up, it's literally mid. Like, they could have done so much better with this Hypercharge. This Hypercharge makes Otis for 1.5 seconds. It's a thing. Like, Otis is super weak to brawler already, so they can't attack. So that's just basically guaranteed that you get a free kill. And what's interesting is that the silence after the however, you get 1.5 seconds of both. However, this Hypercharge is not that great, because why would you need a stun for a super that already guarantees you to get a free kill? On top of that, it's kind of bugged right now. The first issue is that it, for some odd reason, doesn't work with Otis's 8-drop star power. It doesn't give him the extra damage, the extra projectile from the star power. And also, I don't know if this is intentional or not, but for some odd reason, the stun from the Hypercharge super just doesn't work on some brawlers. Like, for some reason, there's like a couple of brawlers like Fang, Frank, and whatnot. When you use this Hypercharge super on it doesn't sync him up. I don't know if that's bugged or not, but if that's intentional, that is really dumb, because What's the point of the stun? What's the point of the stun not interrupting the attack? Honestly, I really thought they could have done better with this hypercharge. I'm very disappointed. Number 34. Cordelius' hypercharge, Complete Darkness. Cordelius is my favorite brawler, but my biasness is not saving him. His hypercharge is boring. Like, honestly, I feel like they could have done more with it. So basically, his hypercharge makes it so that way he slows any brawlers that he sends to the Shadow Realm. Which sounds decent on paper, which basically means he's guaranteed a KO or guaranteed to escape. The problem is that it's pretty redundant in the sense that Cordelius already gets a movement speed buff when he's in the Shadow Realm, so it's completely redundant. Like, it doesn't like help him too much. It's boring, it's lacking, it doesn't do anything else. On top of that, Cordelius kinda does take a little while to charge it. I mean, the supercharging ring helps him charge it. And as well, like, how do I put it? What was I gonna say again? I can't remember what I was gonna say. Hold on a second, sorry, but like, it's just boring, to be fair, I remember what I was gonna say. To be fair, Cordelius, his mechanics are a little complex, so trying to figure out a good hypercharge for him is like kind of hard, and also it's kind of in Miko and Nani situation where that if you don't KO the enemy immediately once you use your hypercharge super, you essentially waste the stat boost because you can't exactly use like the stat boost outside of the Shadow Realm if you don't play it. So it's like Miko and Nani's, you kind of have to use it as late as possible. Sorry, Cordelius, I love you, but my biasness is not saving you here. Your hypercharge is simply too boring for my liking. Number 33. Ems' hypercharge, Overhyped Haze. People slightly underestimate this hypercharge. I mean, it's not like good, but it's not bad either. So Ems' hypercharge makes her super push brawlers to the outer edge of the super, and then she follows it up with a 360 degree of her main attack. The main attack, the extra spray from the super doesn't seem that great, to be honest. I mean, it does a little damage. I think the knockback is pretty good. However, the thing about Ems is that unlike other brawlers, because of her duration of her super, she can't cycle her hypercharge supers. So like you only get to use one per hypercharge. Honestly, I think that's a little ridiculous if I'm being honest with you, but like it's not terrible, it's just that there are better hypercharges in this one. Number 32. Rosa's hypercharge, Grasping Roots. Like M's hypercharge, Rosa's hypercharge gets severely outclassed by other hypercharges. What this hypercharge does is that it creates an area around Rosa that slows enemies down while she's using her super. Like, it's kind of like M's super, but the area is not as big as her super, but it's just big enough to allow Rosa to close the gap between her enemies. However, this hypercharge does get somewhat outclassed by other hypercharges. Like, it's actually a pretty decent hypercharge, just there are better hypercharges. Honestly, also, did they nerf its rate of charge? Because, like, I remember when it first came out, you used to be able to get you used to be able to charge like 2 supers in a sitting with your hypercharge, but now it's like almost impossible. I don't know, maybe it's just me or I just have a skill issue, but other than that, like I said, this hypercharge gets severely outclassed, they're better. Number 31. Fang's hypercharge, Dragon Kick. This hypercharge needs a buff. Like, this is the only thing that would keep Fang in the meta, and without it, like, he's terrible. And it's such a shame too, because He's one of my favorite brawlers to play. This Hypercharge makes Fang's super go through walls, and he leaves popcorn in his wake. Now, the popcorn isn't anything special. It's not like crazy or anything, but the wall, allowing his super to travel through walls, takes care of his biggest weakness. The fact that he doesn't do well against play well around walls. The problem with this Hypercharge, and that's why it's so low on the list, is that it takes him forever to get it. In fact, I think he has the lowest rate of charge for his Hypercharge. Because when it was first released, you can get like maybe 1 or 2 a game. Supercell went like, oh no, it's too powerful, we gotta nerf its rate of charge. And then they nerfed it to the point where you can barely even get 1 a game. Like, I don't understand why. Like, this Hypercharge is one of the things that makes Fang extremely good. And without it, he fell off, man. Like, it's such a shame too, because it's such a great Hypercharge. And then they decide, hey, we're just not gonna make it crazy strong. Like, I'm sorry, Fang, I loved it, your Hypercharge, I love everything about you. It's just that your Hypercharge really needs a buff for me to even play you again. Number 30. Angela's Hypercharge in my element. Angela kind of suffers the same fate as Fang. It's not as bad as Fang, so that's why I'm rating it higher. But it's not. It's still the same issues as Fang. His Hypercharge makes his super follow him wherever he goes, which is honestly amazing. It makes Angelo a really strong brawler, and it makes him much more obnoxious. In fact, his super was already probably one of the strongest in the game, allowing him to get nice poison damage to keep enemies from healing. And honestly, it also took care of another one of his biggest weaknesses, where he has to stay inside the area of the poison, and for him to even use the poison arrows, which kind of sucks because it wouldn't allow him to push up and pinch other brawlers. The problem is, like Fang's Hypercharge, it actually takes him a really long time to charge it. When it first came out, it took him 12 hits to charge it, which is about 4 supers. And they buffed it so that way it takes him 8 hits to charge it now. But the issue comes with the fact that Angel's shots are extremely thin. So hitting his shots to get the Hypercharge, you have to play perfectly if you want it. Even then, there'll be cases like Fang's where you won't even get the thing in the game. Honestly, I'm kind of noticing a pattern is that with brawlers who have really fast supercharge rates, they tend to have terrible Hypercharge rate of charge for the Hypercharges. Honestly, it's a great Hypercharge, but the fact is that it takes Angelo forever to charge it stinks. Number 29. Tick's Hypercharge, Headstrong. I think people slightly underestimate this Hypercharge. I think it's actually a pretty good Hypercharge. There is one aspect of it that I think is what is honestly not the best for Tick. This Hypercharge makes Tick deploy his head faster, and it has an increased movement speed, and it leaves 6 of his main attack projectiles on the ground upon detonation. It's a pretty good Hypercharge because it does take care of Tick's biggest weakness when it comes to his super, is the fact is that some brawlers can take his super out before they even get to it. Before it even gets to them. However, the thing about it that actually kind of stinks is the extra mines that it leaves down. Because it's kind of in a similar issue as Pearl's, is that the fact that his head does knock back people when you use it. So the fact that when you knock them back while the mines get so the fact is that you knock them out of the area of the main attack projectiles upon detonation kind of hurts it, because those mines do 4,000 damage apiece. That's insane if you think about it. But the fact is that he super does do knockback about it. You're not really going to get much value out of it. Honestly, it's not a terrible Hypercharge. I think people just slightly underestimate it. Number 28. Spike's Hypercharge, Blooming Season. This Hypercharge is not as bad as people make it out to be. Like, I was going to put it at the bottom, but then I remember it does have some value to it. This Hypercharge makes Spike's super bigger, which is a bit boring. Like I said, like I've said before, the first batch of the Hypercharges were a bit boring. Not gonna lie, but this Hypercharge does have some value to it because it is bigger. You can get insane value out of it. Like, enemies are gonna have a hard time getting out of it, especially if you have his mythic gear on. Oh lord, Spike is a menace with this. It's a shame though, he's not that great anymore, to be honest with you. Like, I know it's a bit bland, it's a bit boring because of its size, but it's still a really fun Hypercharge. Number 27, Colt's Hypercharge Dual Wielding. Another one of the first batch of Hypercharges. Honestly, the first batch was a bit boring. I'm glad they started making flashier and cooler. But, like, although it's boring, it's still somewhat good. Colt's Hypercharge makes his super 120% wider, which makes it much easier to hit his super. Because, like, Colt is one of those brawlers where you have to... He's a very skilled brawler. It's like, it takes... You have to practice with hitting his shots, because his shots are not that easy to hit. And this Hypercharge makes it a lot easier to hit his super. But then again, it does still get somewhat outclassed by other Hypercharges. Like, sure, the extra width for the super is nice, but then again, you can still miss it. Like, it's if you miss this thing, it is a pretty big skill issue. Although it's a nice Hypercharge, honestly, I think there are better. Number 26, Shelly's Hypercharge Double Barrel. Man, this Hypercharge fell off hard, bro. This Hypercharge made Shelly a monster when it first came out. But now it's kind of mellowed out, and Shelly's alright with it, but there are better Hypercharges. This Hypercharge makes Shelly's super wider, which allows her to hit it, get more enemies. It helps with dealing with more enemies up close and dealing more damage. It's a good Hypercharge, it's decent, but like I said, there are better Hypercharges. I mean, like, sure, when it first came out, well, Shelly was a monster with it. Like, you couldn't even stop her with this Hypercharge. But, like, it's still alright, but like I said, better Hypercharges out there. Number 25, Jackie's Hypercharge Seismic Event. I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack and hate in the comments for putting this Hypercharge higher than Shelly's, because although a lot of people say it is very bad, I think it's decent. This Hypercharge makes Jackie super slow any enemies around her while she's using her super. Honestly, I think the slow is amazing, because although Jackie pulls enemies closer to her, that they can either knock her back or escape quickly after she uses her super, and honestly, I think the slow helps with that. Helps with keeping enemies from escaping. Like I said, there are like some better Hypercharges out there, but this Hypercharge is actually pretty decent. I don't know why people hate it. Remember, this list is also based on my opinion as well, so if I think this Hypercharge is actually pretty good, then so be it. Number 24, Crow's Hypercharge Utility Knives. Yo, who remembers when this Hypercharge was bugged? It didn't work like how it was supposed to work. That was a crazy bug, but other than that, this Hypercharge is pretty cool. There's one thing that's keeping me putting it high. But anyway, this Hypercharge makes Crow's super knives become piercing, and then they come back to him like boomerangs. That is honestly a very cool concept for this Hypercharge. Honestly, I love everything about this Hypercharge. This Hypercharge is good in some certain scenarios, and it absolutely freaking demolishes the high safe. The only thing about this Hypercharge is, like Fangs and Angelo's, it takes them a really long time to charge it. But I can kind of forgive him with that, simply because his attacks do poison damage, so it makes it a little easier to charge it. But other than that, this Hypercharge is very decent. Overall, love this thing. Just wish I could have put it higher because of its rate of charge. Number 23. Buzz's Hypercharge, Buzz Watch. Yo, if they had done what they originally planned to do with this Hypercharge would probably be at the top of the list, because it would be broken. So, this Hypercharge makes it so that Buzz can continuously use his super as long as he hits a wall. Like, the super will recharge as soon as he hits a wall. Which is pretty cool, but originally what it did, before it came out, when it was first revealed, is that it would instantly recharge if he hit anything. Enemies are obstacles, it would just instantly recharge. Which made it extremely broken, and that Buzz could essentially perma-stun people with his Hypercharge. And then they immediately change it so that way it only works when he hits a wall. Which, you could still somewhat perma-stun people if you can time it right. Because I know you can stun people if you hit walls and at the corners of walls. You just have to time it right. But like, that's still a pretty decent Hypercharge, because it does give Buzz amazing mobility. He can cross the map in like an instant. Like, not like an instant, but he gets crazy mobility with it. He can get around the map faster. He can create pressure much better with his Hypercharge. And a strategy I've learned with this Hypercharge, thanks to watching some of my other favorite YouTubers, is that if you don't have your super immediately charged, so I can actually show you guys. So if you don't have your super immediately charged, what you can do is activate the Hypercharge super, hit the wall, so that way your super can get the stun. Which honestly, I do kind of wish they kind of kept it so that way it could work against enemies. Maybe they could have just changed that so that way it only works if it does work on enemies, but it doesn't stun them. That probably would have been really cool though. But other than that, it's a pretty decent Hypercharge. Overall, I'm kind of happy with it. Number 22. BB's Hypercharge, Out of Bounds. If this Hypercharge had been what I predicted for it, honestly, I think this would be a really broken Hypercharge. But for now, it's a solid Hypercharge. I mean, it could be better, but it's still pretty good. This Hypercharge makes BB's super bubble split into two after she hits an enemy with it. Now, it only splits into two once, and then after it keeps hitting enemies, it doesn't split again. Which honestly would have been really crazy if they did that. But the reason why I'm putting this Hypercharge pretty high is because she gets it so fast. Like, it takes her 6 hits to get one Hypercharge super. On top of that, if you can hit multiple enemies with her super, you can get that. You can spam Hypercharge supers. Like, it's like so crazy. And the fact is that BB takes the least amount of, like, currently on this hype list, she takes the least amount of hits to get her super. And honestly, it's insanely crazy. The only thing I gotta ask is that why does this Hypercharge super not work with her second gadget? Because the bubble doesn't split when you hit enemies with her gadgeted super, which I don't understand. But back to what I'm saying, this Hypercharge is extremely good because she gets it really crazy, and if you can hit multiple enemies at once, it's chaos galore. Number 21. Maisie's Hypercharge, Aftermath. This Hypercharge back in its day was extremely good. Like, it was really good. It's boring, but it's still pretty good. So what it does is that it makes Maisie fire 6 of her main attack projectiles in the area of her super, which is a little boring, I'm gonna be honest. But it's still a pretty good Hypercharge. The thing that's keeping me from putting it higher is because recently she did get a nerf to her supercharge rate. So it takes her more hits to get her super, which means that she can't exactly cycle her super as easy as she could beforehand. which kind of stinks because this is like it's really cool. It's like really satisfying when you cycle this hypercharge super. But because of the nerf, it's like it's not as fun as it used to be anymore. I think that's probably why also Maisie fell off because of her rate of charge nerf. So, but other than that, this hypercharge is good. But there are some better hypercharges on this list. Look at that damage! That damage! So much damage. Number 20. Nita's Hypercharge, Hyper Bearing. I hate playing against this Hypercharge. Like, it's so annoying. Literally. This Hypercharge makes Nita's Bear Bruce have more HP, and it's way faster. Now, it doesn't do any crazy damage, but the thing about it is that what makes it so annoying is the fact that it has a lot of health, which means that enemies need a lot of damage to take it out, which makes it so that way they waste a lot of ammo trying to get rid of Bruce instead of focusing on the other enemies. On top of that, Nita gets this hypercharge extremely quick. Like, it takes her 2 whole supers just to get 1 hypercharge, which is insane. Like, it's so annoying because 1, Bruce is extremely fast. Like, he's faster than most brawlers, which makes it really annoying to get away from him. Now, I wish that he did do extra damage, but it's understandable why he doesn't do any extra damage. But paired with both her star powers and her gadgets, this hypercharge is extremely annoying. Number 19. Tara's Hypercharge, Super Massive. Is it boring? Albeit yes. Cause it's like I wouldn't have been surprised if this hypercharge came up with the first batch because it's kind of bland. This hypercharge makes her super 20% bigger, which albeit is very boring, very plain, and it honestly sounds like it would have been better if that hypercharge came out with the first batch. But what's very good though, because it does cover a bigger area and it can help you make better plays. Honestly, it's a really good hypercharge. The only thing that's really holding it back is its rate of charge, because Tara takes kind of forever to charge it. You can hit a lot of enemies with it, then it's a pretty good hypercharge. But other than that, it's alright. I mean, it could have been better, but honestly, it's still a pretty good hypercharge. By the way, if you do miss this hypercharge super, you have a massive skill issue, because there is no excuse not to miss this giant size of a super. Number 18. Leon's Hypercharge, Limbo. I have so much fun with this hypercharge. Like, literally, it's one of my favorites to play with. This hypercharge is insane. Honestly, it was so good when it was first released, they had to nerf it. This hypercharge makes it so that way whenever Leon goes invisible, he can still attack without revealing himself, which is absolutely amazing because it allows him to get the jump on people, get kills and get out without being noticed. Like, it's so good. The only thing is that it does have a slow rate of charge. It takes Leon a really long time to charge it, and sometimes I'm only able to get 1 a game, but that doesn't really matter since you can make some really good plays with it. Of course, you can still be seen if you get too close to people, but like, it's still amazing. The only other thing as well I gotta say is that, like Em's hypercharge super, you can't exactly cycle it because once the duration goes on, you can't activate it again. You have to wait until the super wears off. But I really like this hypercharge because of how many plays you can make with it. Number 17. Piper's Hypercharge, Boppin'. God, this video is almost an hour long and it's taken me 4 weekends to finish it. Sorry for the delay, but this hypercharge is interesting to say the least. This hypercharge makes Piper drop more bombs and she moves faster in the air with increased movement speed. And not only that, but she knocks back any enemies near her wherever she lands and destroys any obstacles in her way when she lands. Example, walls and bushes. This hypercharge is great because it allows Piper an easy means of escape faster. However, it's I mean, it's kind of counterintuitive if you think about it, because it turns Piper into an assassin, which Piper is not exactly meant to be played like that. She's meant to be played as a sniper. You're supposed to stay back whenever you use it. But other than that, it's actually a pretty solid Hypercharge. This Hypercharge is one of the things that's keeping Piper in the meta right now, and honestly, I don't have any problems with it. Doing that for some extra fun. Number 16. Jessie's Hypercharge, Scrappy 2.0. Ah, who doesn't love good old Jessie? And her Hypercharge is pretty solid too. Now, this Hypercharge makes Scrappy, her turret, much bigger with more health, and it does increase damage. Now, it's a very good Hypercharge. It's really good in Heist, but if you try to use it anywhere else, it's still really good. The thing about it though, because of the extra damage it does, it can melt you if you're just not paying attention or not trying to take it out. It's just an extremely obnoxious. Sure, its aiming path is not that great, but like, other than that, it's still a really good Hypercharge. I don't understand why a lot of people say it's really only good for Heist, because I've seen it be used for everywhere, and it's just so obnoxious and so annoying. Absolutely a great Hypercharge, but there are better Hypercharges. Number 15. Edgar's Hypercharge, Outburst. When this Hypercharge was first released, I was very skeptical, as I thought it wouldn't be that good. But holy cow, after it came out, it was so good it had to be nerfed. Like, it was crazy. Now, this Hypercharge is a little different compared to the rest of Edgar's, well, the rest of the other Hypercharges, because it's the second Hypercharge that it's one of the two only Hypercharges where it doesn't indirectly affect his super. Like, his super does gain a buff, but it doesn't, like, indirectly affect it. It doesn't directly affect it. It indirectly does something else. This Hypercharge makes it so that way after Edgar uses his super, his reload speed and his rate of supercharge drastically increase, allowing him to dish out attacks faster and get multiple jumps off with his super. Now, when this Hypercharge was first revealed, I thought it was pretty lame. I thought it wasn't going to be any good, but it is really good, as it allows Edgar to secure kills quicker and escape if he needs to. Now, the only thing I do have to say about this Hypercharge is the fact that it does take Edgar a long time to charge it. Even though he does charge his super over time, it still takes a very long time. Even with his first gadget, Let's Fly, it still takes a long time to charge. That's because they did have to nerf it because it was so good. But other than that, it's an amazing Hypercharge. Honestly, I don't see anything wrong with it. It's such a great ability. It helps Edgar so much. Yeah, he's still not that great in the meta now, but who cares? It's still a good Hypercharge. Sorry, folks, I gotta split this video into two parts simply because I don't have enough room in the video editing app I use to upload everything at once, so I gotta split this into two parts. Sorry.